So do you have my? I just wanted to say this. Let's just say you're on a helicopter and you're on the equator and your feet are moving at 1,050 miles an hour according to NASA, and I'm standing at the South Pole on the axis where it's not spinning. And we could both agree that if we're on a cell phone, we could believe that below our feet that we feel about the same, walking in a circle, jumping up and down. So now what we both did, we both rented a helicopter, and we're going to go and hover straight up at about 20,000 feet. I think is about as high as they go. And we're going to stay up there for about an hour. And during that hour, we're going to go a mile north and come back, a mile south and come back, and a mile east and a mile west and come back to see if there's any different feeling on the helicopter as far as any type of friction or air or anything. And after that hour, we're going to land basically straight down where we took off from. And I'm just kind of questioning people that believe in the globe is how is that possible if the equator is traveling at 1,050 feet? You know,
Because
you know,
so are
you
you.
know,
Okay,
so,
here's a perfect analogy. Let's imagine we're in a train, right? Like a big passenger train, right?
okay.
Are you with me? So, and it's moving at, let's just say, 70 miles an hour, right? We don't have a helicopter because helicopters are too big, but we can get a drone. A drone is just a tiny helicopter. If we put our drone on the ground, the train can move 80 miles. If I lift that drone up, is it going to travel with the train or is it going to fly backwards at apparently 70 miles per hour?
It's probably going to move with the train on the inside because it's encased. So it's encased atmosphere, I suppose you could say, or encased
Well, it's not
environment.
really the part where it's encased isn't super important either, because if you were on top of a train and you jumped up, you wouldn't stay still while the train keeps moving. You would land where you started. Now, maybe some air resistance would push you back a little bit, but otherwise, no. So the reason when you're on the equator and you move up in a helicopter, the reason the ground doesn't move below you is because you were moving with the ground in the first place. You conserve your momentum.
So you're saying that all of the atmosphere at the helicopter when it's hovering, because I mean, we can look at that Baumgartner, whatever the guy is for the stratosphere jump too. He went up like, what was it, 60,000 feet. And he jumped and he came up and he was up there for a little over like 3 hours and 15 minutes. And he came down and he was only 24 miles away from where he started from. So, but then I got to turn around and look at the ISS space station, which is rotating at 17,000 miles an hour and is approximately, from my understanding, is 100 miles
Well,
up.
it's
Nope. Go
no,
ahead.
it's 400. It's about it's about 250 miles up. The International Space Station is orbiting the Earth.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where the spin starts. I really am. I'm just trying to figure out where the spin starts, where you can actually feel it
What
in one of your senses, some type of empirical evidence on
Well, the Earth spins. I know. At the equator, it spins at over 1,000 miles per hour. But the Earth is that's actually it takes an entire day for the Earth to spin in a circle one time. Uh, you're not going to be able to feel a spin that slow. That's 15 degrees per hour. It's like sit in a chair and like build something that can somehow steadily without having like a clock motion, something that can steadily move or constantly move 15 degrees in 1 hour and then report when you feel the movement. I mean, you won't.
isn't that regardless? I mean, if the equator's moving at 1,000, I mean, should in 1 hour, I mean, that's whether you're talking in degrees or not, but in 1 hour, I mean, that's 1,000 miles that should have slid somewhere underneath that helicopter. But what you're saying is a whole atmosphere and everything. So where is that
Yeah,
separation?
if the Earth is moving, the whole Earth is moving. The atmosphere, the oceans are rotating with the Earth.
Yeah, I'm just not buying it. It just doesn't seem empirical enough for me. I guess. I mean, that's why I'm a flat earther and stuff, and I ask questions, and I've seen you on here a bunch of times. I do appreciate having me on, but I'm not quite sold on that at all. I just think that there should be something that should be felt on it, and I think that, the greatest lie ever told, when I looked past the whole flat earth and the whole globe debate, and I started studying Operation Paperclip, and then the next one was Operation High Jump to to Deep Freeze to Fishbowl to Dominic, and it all sets a storyline in itself. From starting from June of 1945 and then going into high jump in 46, and you skip out about 6 or 7 years because actually Deep Freeze was a resupplying of the stations and stuff and their bases, for high jump. And then Fishbowl was them finding the firmament and shooting rockets up into it. It's why you've got the 1957 Britannica. I actually have one where it talks about the firmament going up like 11,800 feet. From what I understand, even further looking into that, it was Walt Disney before he had Disneyland and Disney World. He actually was the guy that was filming that down there for the Navy when Admiral Byrd and them guys were down there. And then after Operation Fishbowl, trying to blow through the wall, was Operation Dominic, and that was in 1962. That was actually the end of dissolving of Operation Paperclip, and that's when they were trying to take in 5 big nuclear tests. Were trying to blow up into the firmament as makes its arch after it goes up straight from the. Anyway, so I'm kind of a believer, and that was the greatest lie ever told. And then we've been indoctrinated with the globe into our schools through the Rockefeller system and everything else, but. I just wanted to throw that out there and get your take on the whole helicopter thing, because I use that as an example when I'm talking to people that still believe in the globe. So, but I appreciate you having me on and stuff.
Um, I mean, if you don't want to talk about it anymore, that's
No,
cool
no,
with
no.
me, I
Let's
guess.
keep. Let's keep going. What's your take on all that then?
The conspiracies that I don't dig into conspiracies, but whether or not humans ever even went to space actually is kind of irrelevant as to whether or not the Earth is flat or a globe, because you can prove it in all kinds of different ways. Like, for example, the people in the southern hemisphere see different stars than people in the northern hemisphere do, and the night sky rotates in the opposite direction around a singular point. I mean, that's physically impossible on a flat Earth. The only thing that makes any sense is that Earth is a spinning globe.
Yeah, but if you take that same concept, and there's a guy that Julio Castro, I think his name is, and he just wrote that Earth book, and he just came out with an explanation for that I thought was relatively good. I sent that out to some people this morning, and he was talking about how it being reflection off the firmament, off the glass and stuff. He had a pretty good explanation of how you can see it differently from the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. But I'm not smart enough to really explain exactly how he put it. That's why he's the guy that wrote the book out of it and selling
Yeah,
a
but
bunch
you
of copies
couldn't
of it.
but you couldn't reflect something that so if Earth is flat, oh, I suppose we can get the whiteboard out. If Earth is flat, then everybody looking south is looking in a completely different direction, right?
Yeah, I've seen so many people go back and forth on this, but I'm going to try to follow along with you. I kind of get lost in this kind of
So
stuff.
if Earth is flat, if everybody looks north, everybody's looking at the same point because north is this singular, the geographic North Pole or whatever is this singular point. Well, that's true on a globe too. North is one spot, right? But on a globe, south is also one singular direction because there's a south pole. But on a flat Earth, south is just opposite of north. So on a flat Earth, everybody looking south, they're looking in different directions. Yet if you look on Earth, what happens is people in the southern hemisphere who look south, if you tell them look south and look straight up, they see the exact same thing. It'll be like the Southern Cross constellation, right? That's physically impossible if Earth is flat. And then that explanation for a reflection would make it spin in the like that works for a single observer, but it doesn't work for more than one observer in more than one place. So it completely breaks down.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's kind of funny. I only got into that Earthbook video and sent that around, which I normally don't send or message anybody on anything. But he had a very good explanation of it, and using it as reflection. But I couldn't repeat what he said. But I know there's been just a lot of debate between the Glovers and the flat Earth people out there lately and stuff. But it's kind of a tough one for me to follow along. So I find it strange that Admiral Byrd in 19, I believe, is 26, in a 3-prop airplane full of fuel. took off to circumnavigate the North Pole from the furthest northernmost expedition base or point, and he did it in less than 15 hours. And then here he went down in 1929, and I believe from 31 to 33 to circumnavigate the South Pole, but it wasn't done in either of those two adventures. And each time he was bringing more and more ships and more people, and they're building more and more expedition points and expedition bases and stuff. And seems to me that it would have been a little bit less time to circumnavigate the South Pole for how long it took him to do the North Pole. Of course, this is what made him, through his expeditions and his explorations, is what made him Admiral Byrd. You also get, you've got his story with his diary and his son and stuff too, and the flying into the inner Earth. I mean, that story gets out there ways too, but I just don't believe that there's actually a South Pole. I believe, because when I'm 60 years old, and when I remember in schools, I'm pushing in the projector screen, and they pulled the white screen down over the blackboard, and they showed two guys with parka jackets trudging through a windy snowstorm, pulling a sled, and they got to a certain spot, and they put a candy cane pole in the ground, and they popped a globe on top, and that's what we were taught, when I was 8 years old, is what the South Pole was. But then I started looking, maritime law and stuff and all that wording, and you've got sea level and horizon, and you've got the Arctic Circle, and it's just I've been pretty much sold on flat Earth, but I do listen to both sides of it and stuff too. But that whole star thing is probably not going to register with me tonight. It's just a little bit hard for me to understand standing upside down and looking at stars. Imagine them going the other direction. But anyway.
Once he speaks about airplanes and what Admiral Byrd did, means virtually nothing for the shape of the Earth. There are things that people could have done 1,000 years ago where they could prove the shape of the Earth experimentally, or maybe not like observationally, maybe not experimentally. You can call some of them experiments, I guess. So to me, I don't bother with the conspiracies because they're irrelevant,
Yeah, I guess if I had to answer that, the only thing I could say was when people ask me why, what difference does it make? It's like, well, your choices are the Big Bang and everything blew apart and it somehow came together and all these different forms of life happened, or we grew from the algae in the ground or from stones from other planets that drifted in and, crashed together. And what I think it is, whether you want to call God, whatever you want to call God, whether it's within yourself, it's out, or you go to church or not, it seems to me that you're taking creation. That was the whole thing with the lie, was to take creation out of the picture. Because if we never got taught the globe in school and the Earth really was flat, or really is flat, just say, it really does take a big part of creation away from the first page of the Bible, makes it all bullshit as far as I'm concerned. And what I find with the Bible, and I'm not that big on it, there's a lot of people way better than I'm at it. But I know in the last paragraph of the last book, it says you're really not supposed to change one tittle or one word in this book, or all these curses be added on to you. And then also look at the very first paragraph of the book where, you hovered over the waters, you separated the waters. And if I'm going to read a book, I want it to be interesting. I want that first page to kind of grab me. And it really does. I find it really interesting to read the creation part of the first book. But so when you take that out of the schools and out of the whole educational system, which the Rockefellers kind of indoctrinated our education system. And years ago, they taught, talk to some super old people back in the schools. Well, I believe in some areas they did. But so anyway, I'm just,
okay. Can I interrupt here?
Sure.
Okay. To me, what sounds more reasonable? A book that's full of nonsense and stories about things that make less sense than leprechauns and unicorns being written by ignorant people in order to try to control people. Is that what makes sense? Or is it or people are lying about the shape of the Earth in order to lie and control people? What could possibly be the reason for lying about the shape of the Earth? What is the goal with that? That's one thing that is just completely never ever spelled out to me by people that think the Earth is flat. Why lie that it's a globe?
Well, I think the whole thing fits into, if you look at BlackRock and Vanguard and big pharma and everything else, and all the money's been made off oil right down to cosmetics and the
but
control
the shape of the
of
Earth couldn't help you make money drilling
No,
for
but
oil. That
but
makes no
but
sense.
but I believe that they've hit it because I think that as you get more connected with yourself or the God inside you, you have more power. You have things that you can do and create. As God says that we can create things better than, or Jesus says better than He. And I think that when you take the creation picture out of and indoctrinate people with the globe, it kind of takes that whole thought process out of it. And I think more and more people look at their whole lives
Why would the
differently.
shape of the earth make people think that God doesn't exist? That makes no sense.
Well, to a certain degree, it's like because it takes the first page right out of the Bible, doesn't it? That He hovered over the waters, He made a separation. We've got a firmament. He created the moon and the stars. He slung them into their position.
Nothing about that says what the shape of the earth is.
Well, nothing says. I don't know. One thing's for sure is nothing in the globe really says anything about us spinning and chasing a sun at 67,000 miles an hour, chasing a Milky Way, and we're in this elliptical orbit. I mean,
Right.
that seems
So
kind of pretty far out there too.
why lie about the shape of the earth? I still don't understand.
Well, I think that in a nutshell, if I had to say, that's why you said, what does NASA and going to the moon and space have anything to do with the shape of the Earth? I think it's all about the money. I mean, let's face it, there's $88 million a day that NASA's taken out of the United States tax money.
One half of 1% of tax funds.
Doesn't matter what percentage it is, it's a lot of money. So it's feeding a
Yes,
lot of
and because
people,
of
you
that,
know.
we now have like internet and cordless tools and lightweight materials and memory foam and memory foam and LASIK eye surgery and cochlear implants and like an unthinkable number of technologies have been developed with that money.
We are we are creators. We're supposed to be creators and create things.
Yeah, you have to pay people to create things though. And who's going to pay like in order to invent things? You know how many times Thomas Edison failed to invent the light bulb before he got a working version?
Yeah, yeah, I think of
Like 1,000, right? So who's gonna pay people to fail 1,000 times over and over again? Only governments can do that because they're capable of collecting that kind of money, and it doesn't like they're not. It's not exactly incentivized purely on losses and gains or whatever, because the the trickle out effect of that obviously works because we have all these technologies now.
yeah, I think we've traded technology. I don't know. I go back into I go as far as like the Devil's Tower over in Wyoming and stuff, that being a giant tree of old with a hexagonal structure and being that the
It's
cell
not
structure
trees don't
tree.
have a hexagonal structure, and a tree that big couldn't exist. That's preposterous.
Yeah, not these day and age. Yeah, it
No,
must be
not in any age.
not
The
in any age. Yep.
no, it could never possibly the what do you call it the surface area volume ratio or whatever. For something that large, it could never it couldn't exist. It would die just by virtue of not being able to purge metabolic waste out of its body fast enough. I've been to Devil's Tower. It's it's huge. I have seen the biggest trees in the world because I live next to them, the General Sherman tree. And I've been to Devil's Tower, and Devil's Tower is orders of magnitude bigger. A tree couldn't possibly be that big. The gravity alone wouldn't allow it to be that big. It would destroy itself.
So do you believe in the Nephilim giants at all then?
No, clearly not. But I just want to stick to why lie about the shape of the Earth.
I'd have to just answer that with money because I would think that if I could perform some type of a lie like that, originally I believe it was to win the Cold War, and then when they realized how much money was involved with it, that you just keep the lie going.
But what are they doing with that money?
Well, I don't know. I would think they'd all have descendants and families and homes and are living a pretty luxury lifestyle to some degree or some point. And I'd imagine a certain amount of it does get back into NASA. They got to show something out there.
Okay.
But
So like the problem with it is that it pays people's salaries. That's the whole reason for manufacturing the
well, if I
lie
was
of the globe.
if I was to pull out some kind of a scam and stuff, and yeah, I was out making a bunch of money out of it for whatever reason it was or not, and I thought, wow, this is a pretty good lie. It's a pretty good system. Look at all the people believing this whole thing. We just shot this in a studio or a pool or whatever it is. Look at all the people that are biting in on this. Well, then you just kind of keep the lie going. You just kind of keep it going. Because I don't believe in outer space. I don't think we've ever left the firmament. Bible says no one will come and no one will go. So yeah, I battle that back and forth with my mind also. But that's why I'm on here. So I'm on getting your opinion on, you know, your
So
take on it.
why do you believe the Bible more than you believe science?
I don't. I think more and more the science is more and more proven that the Bible exists in certain ways or another, but it depends on whether you're looking at the Bible in a physical sense or not.
I don't know what that means. So
Yeah.
why do you believe in a Tower of Babel, which to me is just a completely silly story, but you don't believe the science that says like we've been to space when you do believe the science that says literally everything else about life that doesn't have to do with that, things that are way harder to conceptualize like subatomic particles and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's subatomic particle and atoms and all that kind of stuff for actual creation. I think everything's made through vibration and frequency. And yeah, I mean, what is God? That's you know, I
Right, but
just, I get,
why do you believe the Bible over those things?
well, I'm not that big on the Bible. I actually been in and out of the church so much. I had this whole flat earth conversation with some people in the church, and there was a couple of the elders, two of them, as a matter of fact, that, I asked them, I said, if you had to take your money and bet left or right, whether the earth was flat or a globe, and they would bet on it being flat. And the other elders were just the opposite, and they were kind of old school and wouldn't really actually hear it out. And the pastor was caught a little bit both ways, but more towards the globe. And it does actually, this whole thing does put bring the church out there too. If we are dealing with what we're talking as a flat earth, I mean, what does that say about the church at this point, you know, and why they're not preaching? Because I don't hear too many of them preaching actual creation when I go to church services.
Alrighty. Well, anything else?
No, no, I'm pretty much done. I got to cash in for the day, but I appreciate you putting me on and stuff. As far out as this was, I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.